Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nick Nanos.
Nick, it's our last episode of the year, and following holiday tradition, we're going to look at seat projections, regional breakdown, and preferred PM numbers in detail. So let's start with the big picture seat projections. What's the latest?
Well, not looking pretty good for the Liberals, that's for sure. You know, the show is called Trendline. So let's look at the trend line for the Nanos seat projections that we do every month. You know, check out the Conservatives. They basically have been in an upward trajectory since the summer. They're up to 166 seats that we've declared if the election were held today, they would win. Liberals down to 55 seats. Remember, Conservatives need 169 to win out of the 338. So they're there in terms of declared. But, you know, the thing is factoring the seats that they're leading in, they're comfortably into majority territory. And, you know, the key takeaway here, not a lot of big differences for the New Democrats or the Bloc, the Green Party, or the People's Party. It's that trend line where you can see the blue trend line is going up, the red trend line is going down. But, you know, check out some of these regional distributions. You can see that, you know, the Liberals are down 64 seats, the Conservatives up 61 seats, most of that in Ontario and Atlantic Canada, where basically it's a Liberal decline and a Conservative pickup. I guess the one thing is there's still, you know, 76 seats that are too close to call in the Nanos seat projection. So maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room, but the trajectory is pretty clear at this particular point in time. And the swings that have taken place, especially in Ontario and Atlantic Canada, are very clear.
Let's dig into that. Obviously, big change in Ontario, but let's fly over to the West Coast and zoom in on British Columbia. How are things there?
Well, you know, the color change kind of says it all. You know, on the left is the model estimates for Nanos in December. On the right is the 2021 election, and you can see on the right, not a lot of blue. Lots of red, actually oodles of red and little spots of orange for the New Democrats. But, you know, what we're seeing, at least in Vancouver and Greater Vancouver, is that the Conservatives are poised to pick up a number of ridings. The NDP are holding on and still leading in a number, but, you know, look at there's only one riding in the Surrey area that we project that the Liberals will hold on to. And, you know, not great news for the Liberal Party in Vancouver when you're looking at how things are shaping up, at least currently in the December seat projections that we do.
Nick, going over the prairies, I'm going to guess not too much has changed.
Yeah, not a lot, but I do want to focus on Edmonton. If we do like a pull up on Edmonton, you know, obviously there's a sea of blue around Edmonton. But right now, the Conservatives are challenging the Liberals in one seat, and also challenging the New Democrats in a seat, where we have two of the seats in the northern part of Edmonton that are too close to call at this particular time. So with the NDP firmly holding one. So, you know, if the Conservatives were strong in the prairies, they continue to be strong, and they'll probably pick up a couple seats, assuming that the trend continues into 2024.
For Ontario, you've already said there's a pretty big change. I'm guessing that's in the GTA.
Yeah, for sure. You know, on the right-hand side, when we look at the last federal election in the GTA, especially, that the Liberals just did extremely well. But now what we're seeing are the Conservatives picking up in the Oakvilles and Mississaugas. Ridings in Vaughan are also good for the Conservatives. Even in Kitchener, you know, you can see Kitchener, we have too close to call right now, although the Greens currently have a hold in Kitchener based on the seat projections. But, you know, when we look at those ridings outside of Kitchener, the Guelph and so forth, the Conservatives picking them up. Also, the Conservatives potentially picking up seats in London. And, you know, when you go into like the St. Catharines, Niagara Falls area, you can see a loss for the Liberals and a pickup for the Conservatives. So not great news for the Liberal Party right now in the GTA. And you know what? If the GTA ends up unraveling, this is just where the Liberals are today. Who knows where they'll be when the election happens? But man, if there is an election held today for when we look at these seat projections, especially in Ontario, it would be ugly for the Liberals.
I'm curious just in Toronto if we're seeing a strengthening NDP anywhere that might be also putting Liberal seats at risk.
Yeah, some of those ones in some of those seats in downtown Toronto, you can see spots of black and orange in the downtown are actually seats that the New Democrats could pick up at the expense of the Liberals. So when we're in the old city of Toronto, it's NDP Liberal with the NDP challenging the Liberals much more than they have compared to 2021. But when we step out and get into the burbs and the GTA, that's when the Conservatives are not only picking up seats, but are challenging the Liberals to pick up even more seats.
Next door in Quebec, Nick, I think you've seen some interesting things happening in Quebec City.
Yeah, Quebec, not a lot of change. Quebec's still good for the Liberals because the island of Montreal is still good. I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a zoom in on Quebec City because, what's interesting here is that, yeah, the Conservatives are holding on to what they've got. The Liberals are holding on to what they've got compared to the last election. But look at the Bloc. The Bloc are potentially at risk with two ridings in the greater Quebec City area. Where they could potentially lose them with two ridings that are too close to call, with challenges from the Conservatives. So this might be fertile territory for Pierre Poilievre, not to pick up a boatload of seats in Quebec, but perhaps knock off one or two and add them to the vote tally, which helps move them into majority territory.
Now in Atlantic Canada, Nick, where the Liberals put a pause on carbon tax on home heating oil, I'm curious if that budged the needle at all for them.
I think so. They talk about the carve out where the Liberals carved out an exemption for heating oil in Atlantic Canada. Just shows that maybe not much of a payoff for this. And it speaks to how angry a lot of voters in Atlantic Canada are. When you look at the right, the Liberals did, at least in 2021, fairly decently in Atlantic Canada. But you can see that ridings like Fredericton moving into the blue column, St. John too close to call right now. And but check out Nova Scotia. The Liberals had a number of ridings, including very strong, picked up all the ridings in Cape Breton. Well, you can see that the Conservatives basically in Nova Scotia are either picking up seats or challenging seats. And how about I'll call it liberal or very red looking in 2021, Prince Edward Island. Basically right now, the Conservatives are going to pick up or challenge. They pick up one and challenge in two ridings in Prince Edward Island. So not great news. So think of Atlantic Canada and Ontario as two of the key regions, including British Columbia, where Conservatives are picking up seats at the expense of the Liberals and are challenging the Liberals in a lot of these ridings.
Nick, if we kind of zoom out and just look at the your ballot tracking numbers, I think you've now got a comparison between now and the 2021 election.
Yeah, and not much better. Conservatives at about 40%. They're up about 6 percentage points compared to the 2021 election. And you can see the Liberals are at 26, down 7. So this is what we're talking about, the new dynamic where Conservative support is going up and Liberal support is going down, especially compared to the 2021 election. NDP are up a little bit. They're at 20. So they're up 2 points. Bloc down 2 points at 6. Green Party, a little bit of an uptick, but within the margin of error at 6. And a little bit of downward pressure on the People's Party compared to the 2021 election. So the key takeaway here is the Conservatives up and the Liberals down, and the dynamic that's happened where people are drifting away from the Liberals. And a noticeable proportion of those people that are moving away from the Liberals are looking at the Conservatives as an alternative.
So Nick, a real theme of this past year has been a real rise in Conservative support. But we've also looked at Canadians' preferred prime minister numbers. You've been tracking that. How do you see that happening for Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau over the past year?
Well, quite a dramatic shift. And especially when we think about where the brand equity and strengths of Justin Trudeau was back in 2021, he's down a full 10 points, which is significant. Where only 21% of Canadians give him a tip of the hat as the preferred prime minister. Pierre Poilievre, compared to the Conservative leader last time, Aaron O'Toole, is doing 5 points better. He's at 33. So, right now you can see Pierre Poilievre having about a 12-point advantage over Justin Trudeau, but basically people souring on Trudeau a lot more than they did back in 2021. Singh down a little bit at 16. Still not a bad score for Singh, but the reality is that the most dramatic change has been people moving away from Justin Trudeau on the preferred prime minister front compared to the election in 2021, which was a squeaker, right? Like lost the popular vote, but won a greater number of seats. So not good. This is not a good trend considering the last two elections have been very tight in terms of actual votes for the Liberals.
And Pierre Poilievre, I think, at the start of the year, we saw his party enjoying greater support than his own preferred PM support. Where are things now?
Well, the thing is that, he's been picking up steam. It's kind of like phase one, where people moving towards the Conservatives, but not necessarily Pierre Poilievre. Now, Pierre Poilievre, and he's probably happy to see this particular trend line, his numbers have been trending up and matching the positive trend. When we factor the ballot and the preferred prime minister numbers, think of it this way, Michael, the Conservatives are up 6 points compared to the last election, and the preferred prime minister score, the Conservative leader, is up 5 points. So now those two things are working in tandem where, when the party picks up, he's picking up, and when he picks up, the party's picking up. So you've got that dynamic where for the Conservatives, both of those leading indicators are moving and trending in a positive direction.
Nick, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, holiday spending in a time of inflation. Nick, another big theme of the past year for our show has been the cost of living crisis, inflation, how Canadians feel about the economy. And in this holiday period, how do Canadians feel about their spending?
I don't know. We're going to get Grinch, Scrooge, I don't know, dour, sour, number of words. We ask Canadians about their holiday spending, whether they be spending more or less compared to a year ago. So for those 1 in 20 Canadians, or about 4%, say, hey, I'm going to be spending more this holiday season compared to last year. But check out the proportion of people that say that they're going to spend less. 54% of Canadians say that they're going to be spending less. That's like 13 times more likely to spend less than more. But the kicker is the trend line compared to last year. About 43% of Canadians said that they're going to spend less. And you can see that that's basically up 9 points over the last year. So belt tightening, Michael, belt tightening, that people are going to be spending less overall. What's interesting is that when we unpacked what they're going to be spending less on, it looks like one of the things that's kind of a wash is food at home. They'll probably be spending about the same, because I think it's like 23% more are going to spend more food at home, on food at home, 27% less, and the rest about the same. So about that. But wow, look at the numbers for gifts and going out. 4% more, 53% less for gifts. And so I don't know what that means for you, Michael. Probably for me, I'm going to get less under the tree to past holiday seasons, and even just going out. I can think the key takeaway here is that only about 1 out of every 20 people are reporting that they will be spending more on gifts and more on going out for social occasions this holiday season, and that people are like 12 to 13 times more likely to say that they're going to trim their budget for spending on gifts and going out, but that the food at home is okay. So we'll be at home with our families. We'll be having our holiday meals. Those holiday meals will be as good as they were last year, but in terms of going out and spending on gifts, much more likely to be trimming the budget this year compared to last holiday season.
Nick, we're seeing, or we're being told, that there are indications that inflation is slowing here and south of the border in the U.S. But it seems like the mood overall for Canadians is still, as you said, one of belt tightening. What's the overall mood? How do you take it?
Well, it's I think people are worried about 2024 and what might happen in the economy. When we ask Canadians, when we ask them about, inflation and whether it's had an impact on major and minor purchases and stuff like that. Back in March 2022, when we asked that question, about half of Canadians, or about 48%, if I recall correctly, said that inflation, I want to say inflation. No, I guess it doesn't work. Anyways, inflation wouldn't have an impact on them. So about half of Canadians said back in 2022, March, that it wouldn't have an impact. That has dropped to 34%, which means now a majority of Canadians say that inflation is a problem and it's having a materially negative impact on their spending, whether it's for major items or other types of items. And you know what, Michael, the other thing is people are still worried about paying for housing significantly. About one out of every three Canadians are worried or somewhat worried about paying for housing in the next 30 days. And you know what? That 33% number or thereabouts jumps up to 47% if you happen to be under 35 years of age, which speaks to the situation where young people are just, probably not going out as much, staying in, but also more likely to be worried about, hey, how am I going to pay for housing in the next 30 days? So pretty dour and worried. We have a significant proportion of Canadians are just outright worried about inflation and paying for housing.
Nick, as we look forward to the year 2024, I'm going to really put you on the spot here. What's your big takeaway for the incoming year?
My big takeaway is watch out for the economy and the performance of the economy. That's going to have a material impact on how people feel about the government, the Liberal government in Ottawa, and potentially also Pierre Poilievre. So if the economy is flat or we have a mild recession, we're probably going to see a continuation of this trend because people will just be struggling to pay for the bills and they'll be very frustrated and they'll be looking for someone to blame and to punish. And the government of the day is usually at the very top of the list of targets when Canadians are feeling grumpy. So if we see a continuation of worry about paying for housing, if we see a continuation of people cutting back on spending, that'll be bad news for the Liberals. Conversely, that will likely be good news for the Conservatives because they will be tapping into, and you know what, whether you love or don't like Pierre Poilievre, he's been focusing on this cost of living stuff and affordability. It's the right thing that Canadians want to hear about at the right time. So watch out for the economy. If the economy does better in 2024, that will be a lifeline to the Justin Trudeau Liberals.
Nick, that's it. That's our last episode of the year. I want to give you and your family my best wishes for the holidays and all of our viewers and listeners.
And back at you, Michael. Take it easy.